As you all know that any module in the English section starts with the reading questions and ends with the writing ones. So usually we start with the easier part, okay? So for most of the students or the SAT takers, the writing questions are easier and less time consuming. So you are recommended and advised to start with the writing questions that can be you can see the writing questions starting from 15, question 15, question 16, from 14 to 16 till the end, till the 27th question. To save time for the more challenging questions in the reading part. All the modules will start with, or both modules بقى, I'm talking generally in all the modules of any trial. The first type of questions you see is the word in context question. And if you attended for us in the previous sessions in which we reviewed before the trial, you must have seen that we followed certain steps, and I passed certain tips so that you guys can be making use of to make the best out of the vocabulary questions, even if some words might not be familiar to you. طيب. Let's check the first one. Okay, the first one. Here there is a blurb. Okay, this part is called the blurb. And usually it introduces a literary text. The following text is from 1955 translation of Samuel Beckett's 1951 novel. Okay, we don't care about all of that. We care about the information given to you about the novel itself. In the text, Molloy has arrived at the town ramparts, an elevated walkway atop the city walls. Okay, so Molloy has arrived at a certain place. Okay. And having cleared the ramparts, I had to confess the sky was clearing prior to its winding in the other shroud. Winding in the other shroud night. Yes, the great cloud was reveling, discovering here and there a pale and dying sky, and the sun, already down, was manifest in the livid tongues of fire, darting towards the zenith, falling and darting again, ever more pale and languid, and doomed no sooner lit to be extinguished. Definitely, you must have said or you must have thought about the complexity of the text and the number of unfamiliar words you come across while reading this question. But let me tell you that even without knowing the meanings of these words, you can still answer the question. First of all, manifest itself, the word in question, is a familiar word. It is supposed to be a familiar word for the SAT takers because this word in particular appeared several times in many questions or in various versions of the same question. So usually in literary passages, you will find a lot of descriptions describing the sky, describing the streets, describing the clouds, describing the night, the day, and so on. But here you have to focus on what was manifest. And the sun, already down, the sun was manifest in the livid tongues of fire. Manifest means it's shown, it appears, okay? So by the process of elimination, okay, you can just eliminate the incorrect or irrelevant answers. Dwelling means living or staying, okay? Staying, living. So we guys need a synonym for this word that can go with the subject sun, because this is obviously, okay, obviously this is an adjective after a linking verb was. Okay, the sun was manifest, was clear, was appearing, okay, was obvious, okay, realized. When you realize something, you recognize it, okay, you recognize this thing, or when you realize, you recognize, okay, you get to know, you get to know got to know بقى, because it's got to know. Situated means placed, from situation, okay, sorry, being in a certain place, okay, situated, located. And perceptible means seen, noticed, okay, so something that is seen, noticed. So the sun was manifest, was clear. The closest meaning to manifest here and to the sun being clear, okay, or seen or obvious, is perceptible. Not living or staying, not realized, because we need someone to realize something, okay. Situated, placed, okay, placed. It's not like we're not asking about allocation. Okay, so the most relevant answer is perceptible. Let's go for a more challenging question, main idea. And main idea questions are usually manageable unless the text is complicated. يعني most of the time the main idea is a manageable question, bearing in mind the certain points. This main idea means the general. You need to focus on the general and avoid the specific details or one specific detail. Also avoid the non-essential information. Of course, we are SAT takers and we know exactly that non-essential information is usually put, after commas, following the independent clauses, or at the beginning of an independent clause set off by a comma, or two commas in the middle, two dashes in the middle. Okay, any appositives, any non-essential or extra information, we shouldn't be ever considering these parts while we are reading, especially that the question is asking you about a main idea or the main purpose. So your best answer shouldn't be related to something that is non-essential, means not main, okay? Not main means not important. So no matter how complicated the terms you're gonna see here, postcranial, skeletal, pneumacity, let it be PSB, PSP. What is PSP? It's what defined here, a system of skeletal air sacs. So it has to do with air pockets, okay? So a certain part in the body or occurred in three Cretaceous clades. Clades like families, okay? So this system of skeletal air sacs occurred found in three Cretaceous clades, three Cretaceous generations or families or whatever, including pterosaurs. Past studies have hypothesized, okay, nice, we learned this topic. We have to focus on the beginning, okay? That's the beginning, the topic sentence, okay? The beginning and the end, like important parts, okay? But we will not, we will not ignore what is in between because actually the supporting details are supporting the main topic. Okay? طيب. Past studies have hypothesized that the trait was homologous. Homologous means originating from a shared ancestor. Homo is similar, shared, okay? So originating from a shared ancestor. Yani this system of skeletal air sacs that occurred in three clades or families or generations, okay, was originated from a shared ancestor. A shared ancestor, uh, among those three clades, three families, three generations. With this in mind, this Aureliano et al. Examined the fossils of common ancestors. Those guys, this guy and his team examined fossils of common ancestors, okay? Of the clades, the three clades, using microtomography, as long as you have graphy, then a sort of images, okay, taken images, finding openings in bones, a possible indicator of PSP. PSP is the system of air sacs, okay, the air pockets, but of sizes inconsistent with PSP. There is an inconsistency now. Yani, okay, they found finding openings in bones, a possible indicator of PSP, but of sizes inconsistent with PSP. Okay, then what is the end and the most important part? Okay, this is important and this is important. The team reported other findings contradicting the homology that happened here. So notice something, guys. There is a semicolon here. So this part is important. The semicolon is telling you here that both sentences are related, closely related. Okay. So here the homology that was mentioned here was contradicted. Okay, reported other findings contradicting the homology hypothesis as well, concluding that PSP likely evolved independently in each clade. Independently, take care when it comes to this word, means separately. Okay, يعني it's not through a shared ancestor. Here, shared is the opposite, the idea of shared or homologous. Homologous is being what contradicted here by the word independently. Okay, and here even the word contradicting is mentioned. Type. Okay, nice. So I had something at the beginning that was contradicted at the end. This is the whole main idea. Okay. We're gonna now avoid any non-essential parts, any the unnecessary or supporting detail. Orliano et al. Found openings in bones in fossils of common ancestors of pterosaurs and two other Cretaceous clades. For my students, the word other here was mentioned in the text because I'm talking about three Cretaceous. So we have common ancestor of pterosaurs and two other that will make three. But the team determined that the sizes of the openings were too varied to be indicative of PSP, thereby weakening the homology hypothesis. Okay, nice. But here, this one can't be taken because here I'm saying, but the team determined that the sizes of the openings were too varied. Okay, were too varied. The word too is an absolute language or an extreme one. An extreme one. It wasn't mentioned here. Okay, it wasn't mentioned here. When I said, but of sizes inconsistent with PSP, I didn't say they are too varied. And here we are focusing only on يعني a certain specific thing that it was indicated in an extreme language, which is unacceptable in SAT as long as it's not mentioned that way in the text. Although past studies by paleontologists concluded that PSP in pterosaurs and two other Cretaceous clades was likely attributable to a common ancestor. Just a second, please. Just a second. Okay, Hamza, you're now a co-host. Okay. Thereby weakening the no, sorry. Although past studies by paleontologists concluded that PSP in pterosaurs and two other Cretaceous clades was likely attributable to a common ancestor, those paleontologists lacked access to technology. Of course, we didn't talk about lacking technology. Okay. Previous studies hypothesized that PSP originated in a shared ancestor of pterosaurs and two other clades, but the findings of Aureliano et al. Suggest that PSP evolved independently in pterosaurs and was subsequently inherited by the other two clades. I didn't separate pterosaurs from the other two clades. I was talking generally about the three clades. Arliano et al. Found that pterosaurs and two other Cretaceous clades with PSP likely lacked a common ancestor. Yes, that's likely lacked a common ancestor with the trait, leading the team to posit a different evolutionary origin for PSP than that posited earlier in the studies. In the earlier studies, this is exactly what happened here. They posited other findings contradicting the homology hypothesis mentioned at the beginning of the text. So letter A is the best answer. Now let's go for a graph question, and the graph questions we chose for you, they are really complicated. The graph questions here are really complicated. طبعا of course we focus on the end of the text. We focus on the end of the text. This is in order to support the conclusion, okay? Usually it is the conclusion, the hypothesis, the claim is usually mentioned at the end. But with harder questions, you guys can go, quickly to skim the first part. And you have to skim the first part quickly in order to know what's going on. Because in the hard graph questions, we might face a difficulty, understanding the last part or the claim or the hypothesis given. Here in the question prompt, it's telling you, taken together, information in the text and the graph best support which conclusion about the campaign ads used in the study by Valentino et al. Okay, so we need to know a support to the conclusion about the campaign ads, advertisements. So let's have a look at the graph. And the graph here shows low knowledge, high knowledge, post-treatment performance of low and high knowledge participants. Okay, we're gonna see. Political scientists have, please concentrate because some of you didn't understand this text. They didn't understand aslan the concept of the text. So pay attention. Political scientists have asserted that by providing succinct means short or concise, we can write it because this one appeared in one of the trials, concise or short, okay, and clear information about candidates and issues. Campaign advertisements, yes, I want this word, this expression, should reduce the differences in political knowledge between groups of voters. Now, the groups of voters I have here, the low knowledge voters and the high knowledge voters. So there is a gap between, or there are differences in the political knowledge between these two groups. It shows from their names, from their titles, that a group has low knowledge and the other group has high knowledge. High, which kind of knowledge? Political knowledge. So the political scientists, they wanted to provide the people with campaign advertisements in order to reduce, to decrease the differences in political knowledge between the low knowledge groups and the high knowledge groups. Now, we have a contradiction or a contrast between the political scientists and the cognitive scientists. The cognitive scientists have noted, however, that existing domain knowledge facilitates the acquisition of new information in that domain. Yani, what does it mean? Most of the students didn't understand this part. The cognitive scientists, those scientists related to education and knowledge and, learning and so on, they have a contradicting view because of, however, they said that the people who have existing knowledge or prior knowledge, this prior knowledge facilitates, okay, makes it easy, makes the acquisition of new information easier, will make the acquisition of new information easier for those who have already some prior knowledge or some existing knowledge. Okay? So those guys shed light on this issue by presenting control ads or ads for George W. Bush and Al Gore. Those were the candidates in 2000 US presidential election to participants with low or high existing political knowledge. So they presented ads, okay, control ads to those guys, those groups with low and high prior political knowledge. Then quizzing participants on their understanding of both candidates' positions. So after they presented the campaign advertisements, the ads, they passed the quizzes for those participants. So if you want to support, the study, Okay, the information taken in the text and graph best support which conclusion about the campaign ads used in the study by those guys who conducted the study. Okay. طيب. For political scientists, if their hypothesis is true, then this will reduce the differences between the low and the high knowledge participants or people, groups. But for the cognitive scientists, the hypothesis will be what indicating in those with high knowledge will acquire the new knowledge easier, and there will be gaps between these two groups. Okay, so we have just a second. We have two groups. We have two groups and two hypotheses. The political scientists hypothesis, and they said that ads will reduce the differences between the two groups. Okay, this is for political scientists. For cognitive scientists, okay, the ads will help or benefit the high knowledge group more. So يعني it will be beneficial for those who have يعني more knowledge already. أهي the existing domain knowledge facilitates the acquisition of new information in that domain. طيب, having a look at the graph here, this is the control group, the information about Bush, the advertisements. After the advertisements, you see the high knowledge increased. Here about Al Gore, after the advertisements, the high knowledge increased. So which one, يعني, whose hypothesis can be very clear here on the graph? This is for the cognitive scientists, not the other ones, not the political scientists. They appear to have benefited high knowledge participants. They here, this pronoun is referring to campaign ads. They appear to have benefited high knowledge participants, yes, more than they benefited low knowledge participants, yes, which lends more support to the view advanced by political scientists. No, this is support, this gives support for the cognitive scientists, not the political scientists. They appear to have had an effect contrary to the effect that political scientists expect. Yes, that's a contradiction to what the political scientists have expected. Campaign ads to have, possibly due to the phenomenon that the cognitive scientists have identified. Yes, إنه prior knowledge, okay, will facilitate the acquisition of the new information found in the ad. So this one is correct. They appear to have worsened the problem that political scientists claim that campaign ads should alleviate. You should know this word. Possibly because the phenomenon identified by cognitive scientists appears not to have occurred. The one of cognitive scientists not to have occurred, no, it occurred. That's the opposite. Okay, cognitive scientists phenomenon, the phenomenon identified by cognitive scientists, اللي هو the ones who have prior knowledge would facilitate the acquisition. This happened. So this part is incorrect. They appear to have had the result that political scientists predict that campaign ads will have, but only for high knowledge participants, which is what cognitive scientists would expect. They appear to have had the result that political scientists predict. No. Political scientists said the differences will be reduced. هنا the differences increased. The differences increased. Okay, so this is the opposite also of what had happened. So the differences didn't increase, didn't, sorry, decrease. It was, or they were, they increased. Okay, so political scientists and so on. Let me say that this is a time-consuming question, and it, honestly speaking, it can be challenging for students with dealing with or struggling with time. This is another one that can take a lot of time from you. But we hope إنه such questions can be recycled. You might be seeing these questions tomorrow. Who knows? Okay. Focus please on them and how we and one tip here, one tip. Yes, usually we focus on the last part of the graph of the text. Okay, when it comes to textual evidence and the graph questions and inference and so on, but never ever ignore skimming this part, because technically the answer here relied on our understanding of the first part and as well as the second part, not the second part only. Please, please, in order not to waste time, when it comes to graph questions, especially if the choices are long and the text is complicated a little bit and there is a contradiction or any transition, it's very beneficial to start from the beginning, skim the first part and scan the last part to know the relationship and to know the concepts and everything. Type. This one also is complicated, honestly speaking, and we're gonna skim the first part. Okay. Domestic sheep's wild ancestor, the mufflon, has a coarse outer coat. So we're talking about sheep, okay? And this is one kind of the sheep has a coarse outer coat, خشن شوية, outer coat, and an inner coat of wool fiber that is finer in diameter and therefore much softer. So we have here, this type of the sheep that has coarse outer coat. Okay, we can relate that to here, mufflon, outer coat, coarse, and an inner coat of wool fiber that is finer in diameter, finer, yes, and thus, therefore, much softer. Okay, nice. In some domestic breeds, such as the Spanish Merino, the outer fiber is only marginally coarser than the inner. Okay, the outer fiber is only marginally, a little bit coarser than the inner. Look at that. Here, the outer coat is from 19 to 24, and the inner coat is from 17 to 21. So really, the difference is not that big فعلا, only marginally coarser than the inner. It's coarser than the inner, the outer. Okay, nice. And the wool is soft overall. The wool is soft. Okay, the inner is softer here in this one. طيب, why I'm taking those notes? Because I know that this question wants to confuse me with what is coarser and what is softer and what is the inner and what is the outer and so on. طيب, thus, merino wool is ideal for delicate garments worn against the skin. So merino wool is ideal for delicate garments worn against the skin. ليه؟ لأن هي softer. 15 here from 17 to 21. This is ideal. Sorry, no, I'm sorry. This one, softer. The outer fiber is only soft overall. Thus, merino wool is ideal for delicate garments. Okay, we can say delicate. We are classifying بس the information. Delicate clothes, garments يعني clothes. Okay. Worn against the skin. يعني it's because imagine how coarse this is and this is. يعني of course it's less coarse. Coarse يعني خشن. It's delicate. طيب. Meanwhile, the Navajo Charo has been selected to retain the marked distinction between outer and inner fiber that merino had lost. Okay, طيب, let's see. Being coarser than merino wool overall, coarser, yes, is coarser, 35 or higher. And what else? Yes, Navajo Charo wool yields a more durable yarn, more durable, بتقعد أكتر, lasts for a longer time, which Dene Navajo weavers use in their celebrated rugs. So this is used in rugs. Yet a comparison of the fiber characteristics, yes, we need to compare now the fiber characteristics of all three sheep reveals that of all the three, يعني the Spanish Merino and Navajo Charo and Mufflin, we're gonna compare the three of them, reveals that. Okay, the Navajo Charo more closely resembles its ancestor, the Mufflin. Okay, so this letter A is saying that this one is resembling this one. طبعا, as you can see, in the uniform softness of its inner fiber. Uniform يعني doesn't change. Okay, uniform, it's stable. بس هنا I have what a range, and I have here one value only. Here I have a range, هنا varied. هنا it has one value only. So it doesn't resemble, and the softness is not uniform. Okay? طيب, let's go for letter B. Domestication resulted in a counterintuitive. Counterintuitive means opposite to what is expected. Opposite to what is expected. This word is repeated several times in SAT. Domestication resulted in a counterintuitive increase in the inner fiber's minimum diameter, making the inner fiber of merino and the Navajo Charo less suitable for delicate garments. I wrote here delicate garments, okay, for merino, يبقى ازاي it's less suitable. This is wrong. Okay. Letter C, the domestication of the Mufflin and the subsequent selection process that produced the Merino and Navajo Charo resulted in greater softness of outer and thinner fiber alike. Nothing is alike. Here, nothing at all is alike. So this is unacceptable. The selection process that enabled the Navajo Charo to retain its somewhat coarse outer fiber also resulted in inner fiber that, at its softest, is softer than either the Mufflin or the Merino's inner fiber. I'm talking about Navajo Charo. Yes, that's right. You see that it starts with 10. And softness here starts with 10, here 17, and here 15. So yes, that's right. That's right. We have the Navajo charro to retain its somewhat coarse outer fiber also resulted in an inner fiber that at its softest, يعني at its lower part, يعني lower level, I mean lower value, okay, is softer than either mufflin or merino's inner fiber. That's right. That's correct. But as you can see, يعني it's not that hard, but it takes time. When it takes time, you feel like what you're a little bit nervous or stressed because you need to finish the other questions. That's why we recommend that you start with the questions you answer very fast, very fast. The writing questions should be answered very fast because every second you're gonna save is gonna be beneficial for you to answer the time-consuming questions like those hard graph questions, those challenging يعني inference questions. Also, sometimes the main idea questions are challenging if the text is complicated and full of unfamiliar words. Anyways, play it smart, as I always say. يعني don't ever search for the right answer, especially with the questions in the second module. Of course, if you're lucky enough, you will be able to find the recycled questions, the questions we answered in the course. The amount of the real questions that are recycled in the test will reduce your anxiety and will reduce your stress to a great extent. Anyways, I pray that you can see these questions and the others we discussed in the course for my students in order, inshallah, to get a very high score. طيب, now, which choice most logically completes one of the tricky question types, the types that you guys always complain about? But also like the graph questions or like the evidence-based or command of evidence questions in general, we focus on the last part. Okay, the last part may include two sentences because the last sentence is always incomplete, so we need it to be completed logically. So you need to focus on the end of the text following the endings, tone, and main elements. Okay, so don't ever forget to read or skim the first part. Okay. Belonging to neither minimalist nor the abstract art movements, so these guys are movements in art, but heavily influencing both. Konstantin Brancusi spent his sculpting career returning to the same few themes. Okay, a kiss, a sleeping head, and a bird in flight. These are يعني, few themes of his work. They are returning to the same few themes. So I described his themes to be few and same. Okay. Each render, so focus on the adjectives, guys. When it comes to any reading question, okay, you have to focus on the adverbs, the adjectives, the modifiers, because طبعا you're not given only nouns, but you're given nouns that are modified or described by certain adjectives, okay? Each rendered in pristine, simple, almost abstract forms. Okay, so we know that they are few. Perhaps the most famous example is Bird in Space, a tall, slender bronze sculpture. This is one of his works that arcs upward in a manner suggestive of flight, but that otherwise lacks an identifiable characteristics of a bird. Okay, يعني it doesn't show like it's a bird, identifiable bird, but يعني it is one of the most famous examples. Okay. طيب. Despite the seeming simplicity of his works. Why simplicity of his works? Because he has few themes. The exacting standards to which Brancusi held his work meant that he produced relatively few pieces over his career. There is thus something of a disparity between. يعني he is he is يعني famous, and he has most famous example of his works and so on. Okay. And here, heavily influencing both. Imagine that this guy heavily influencing both movements, minimalist and abstract, despite that he doesn't belong to any of them. But he heavily influenced both, despite his few themes. But he is very known of one of his most famous examples of famous works. Okay, فthere is a disparity, يعني difference between. Okay, what is the difference? You can see here. Okay, that's an يعني a sign of a contradiction. Okay, there is thus something of disparity between. Okay, and here I mentioned few pieces. Here I mentioned few themes, but heavily. Why this contradiction is there? Because I'm saying that he has few things, but he heavily influenced the movements of art. طيب, so we're gonna see the themes Brancusi explored and the themes favored by artists that he inspired. First of all, I didn't mention anything about artists he favored by artists he inspired. Okay. For themes, I wrote few. For artists, I didn't write anything. So it was not mentioned. Favoritism, no favoring at all. No favoritism at all. And favor, guys, is one of the features of wrong answers if it doesn't exist in the text. If it doesn't exist in the text, so don't go for any choice that tells you someone favors something. Brancusi's importance to the history of art, yes, that's right. And his total artistic output, that's few, yes. So there is a disparity, a difference between his importance and the amount he offered, yes. The nature of much of Brancusi's work and the abstraction of bird in space, no, I didn't hear. Here also, despite, I forgot, despite. This is the most important part. I told you, I forgot only to refer to despite. Despite can be what? Referring to a contradiction. Despite the seeming simplicity of his works, the exacting standards in which Brancusi held his work meant that he produced relatively few pieces over his career. There is thus something of a disparity between the amount of his work and his what? The quality of his work, or the importance of his contribution. I didn't specifically contrast burden space to the other or much of Brancusi's work. Brancusi's relatively limited productivity and the diversity of his sculptures. The only sculpture that was mentioned in the text was that of the bird in space. I didn't mention any. The word sculptures wasn't mentioned. This word wasn't mentioned. Right, let's go for another inference question. And this one, yes, we have a couple of inference questions, I guess. Yes, and then we're gonna go for writing. Here also we have, yes, this part is important. And we're gonna start skimming the upper part. Subsequent to simulating an attack to elicit defense responses in 3 caterpillar species, ecologists placed a treatment group of those individuals in an enclosure where they were exposed to slight, harmless ambient electric field shifts like those created by common predatory wasps in flight. Oh my God, like such a very long sentence. But here they are يعني conducting an experiment. Okay, we have what? 3 caterpillar species. Okay, nice. And we have here a simulation attack. Okay, يعني of an attack. يعني they are simulating an attack علشان to reveal the defense responses in the 3 caterpillar species. They want the 3 caterpillar species to defend themselves against an attack. So what did they do? They put them into an enclosure, حتة مقفولة, where they were exposed to slight harmless electric field. يعني هيعرضوهم to a certain electric field, يعني مجال كهربائي, harmless يعني won't harm them, surrounding them. Ambient means surrounding. Okay, ambient electric field shifts like those created أصلا by the common predatory wasps in flight. يعني when they are attacked by the wasps, the wasps أصلا create such electric field shifts to attack them, to attack the caterpillar species. When exposed to the treatment, to the electric field shifts, those moth caterpillars and scarce vapor moth caterpillars, those types, remained coiled in a defensive position for an average of 71 seconds and 87 seconds, respectively. So they showed a defensive response. يعني فعلا هم ابتدوا يدافعوا عن نفسهم. Whereas European peacock butterfly caterpillars continued to flail defensively for 20 seconds. ده النوع ده برضو can be defend for 20 seconds. Meanwhile, in a control group, all individuals from all 3 species resumed a neutral behavior in less than 1/10 of a second after the simulated attack. يعني after they stopped these electric field shifts, all the individuals stopped their defensive behavior. Okay, they return back to their neutral behavior عادي in less than 1/10 of a second. على طول, immediately they stopped the defense response. These results suggest that okay, let's suggest that what? Some species of caterpillars are able to detect potential threats via changes in ambient electric fields. Yes, these ones were able to detect potential threats via electric fields. Yes, this is a good answer, but I'm not sure it is the best or not. In some caterpillar species, the type and duration of defensive responses to electric field shifts varies based on the size of the shifts. No, I'm sorry, this size wasn't mentioned. The size of the shifts, no. European peacock butterfly caterpillars are more sensitive to changes in ambient electric fields than are those 2 groups. No, I didn't talk about sensitivity. The only difference was the duration of what? The defensive behavior, not more sensitivity at all. I didn't, this is invalid comparison. Caterpillar species with the sensory acuity to detect small changes in ambient electric fields may also be able to cause shifts in those fields. May also, the caterpillar species with the sensory acuity to detect small changes may also be able to cause shifts in those fields. This is not introduced by the text at all. يعني the text didn't say that the caterpillar species would cause shifts in the fields. No, we're saying that they will يعني behave defensively. They will show a defensive behavior, but not that they would cause shifts. And here, my students know that we have something related to suggest. Suggest, whenever we see suggest, your best answer, يعني the 95% is related to a choice that has may, might, likely, possibly, and so on, these words. But 5% can be different. They are from the exceptions, and this increases the level of difficulty of the question. And this is one of them. This is one of them. We have here, we may is found here. May is found here, which is wrong. I didn't talk about this. So when we go for the 5% exceptions to the rule, exceptions of the rule, when the other choices cannot make sense, cannot be relevant answers. Okay, so let's go for the last inference question. And this question, when we saw it, we thought there was something wrong. Yani when we saw this question for the first time, we thought that there was something wrong. Okay, yani with that question, because the end of the text suggested that, but anyways, we're gonna deal with that now. طبعا skim and scan, skim and scan. In an analysis of medieval urbanization in these settlements, in these European settlements, okay, researchers drew, so we're talking about medieval urbanization, and we said urbanization has to do with city life and inhabiting the cities. Okay, medieval urbanization, researchers drew on modern urban scaling theory. The researchers drew on modern urban scaling theory. What is that? What is that theory? What it says? Which posits that population density in core urban areas, كثافة السكان in the core urban areas في المناطق المدنية، okay، في وسط المدن، increases as a city grows larger. يعني the density increase in the core of this, the core areas of the city as the city grows larger. The larger the city, the more population density in the core urban areas. Is it clear? So we can write that. The larger, and I always advise my students to take notes for inference questions, for problematic questions, problematic reading questions, but you don't have to write words or sentences because no time for this, but you can take notes in terms of letters, arrows, positive, negative symbols, and so on. The larger the city, the more population density in the core urban areas. Okay, just to remind me that this sentence will remind me with the information. hypothesizing that this typical relationship would have differed in medieval settlements because of the constraining influence of strong hierarchical social structures. يعني إيه? does it mean? What does it mean? Hypothesizing that. يعني there is a hypothesis that this typical relationship, يعني this typical relationship I've just written would have differed. يعني يعني this relationship would be different in medieval settlements because of the constraining influence of strong hierarchical social structures. Hierarchical means, the arrangement of social levels according to the importance or the ranks. يعني الطبقات. okay الطبقات الاجتماعية. okay there is a strong influence of hierarchy, okay, in the social structures. That's why they would hypothesize ان هيبقى في differences. الريليشن دي هتبقى different in medieval settlements because of these different social ranks, which are much less pronounced in modern cities. يعني اللي مش واضحة قوي في modern cities on social networking and economic integration. Okay, has constraining influence of strong hierarchical social structures on social networking and economic integration. Drivers of urban agglomeration. These are drivers يعني causing factors that cause of urban agglomeration. Agglomeration يعني gathering density يعني. The team created a model that accounted for the presence of restrictive institutions. طيب, they have a model, they created a model. They found, this is the most important part. What did they find? They found that the typically expected density size relationship held for each of the 173 medieval settlements. Expected, okay, density size relationship held for each of the 173 medieval settlements whose growth they analyzed, suggesting that. طيب, let me كده tell you exactly what this part meant in order for you to understand. يمكن يجي لكم بكرة ولا حاجة. okay, إنه researchers expected differences because of strong medieval hierarchies. خلاص, احنا هنا researchers أنا هنا بقول الحتة دي. researchers expected differences because of what? Because of okay what we said, the strong medieval. You can write medieval, okay, like this. يعني you don't have to write the whole word. Medieval what? Hierarchies. okay. طيب, وبعدين but they found the same density size relationship as in modern cities. They found that the typically expected density, okay, size relationship. Typically هي الtypical اللي موجودة. The larger the city, the more population density in the core urban areas. يعني they found that a typically expected density size relationship. The typical one, not the differences they were looking for. Okay, as in modern cities. خلاص, held for each of the 173 medieval settlements. يبقى right كده, they found the typical same density size relationship. When I say typical, يعني the one that we talked about, the typical one, not the different one, as in modern cities. Why I'm writing here? Because this question was problematic and students couldn't understand it. طيب, this implies what? Suggesting that إيه بقى? Although there are trends, there tends to be a positive relationship between population size and development of core urban areas for both medieval settlements and modern cities, social institutions likely limited the rate at which population density increased in medieval settlements. No, we didn't find, although there tends to be a positive relationship between population size and development of core urban areas, actually the relationship was between a density, okay, the population size, okay, let me just make sure, population density in core and the grows, it grows larger for both medieval settlements and modern cities. Actually, and social institutions likely limited the rate at which population density increased. No such limitation mentioned here خالص. I said they found typically the expected density size relationship. No limitations. Despite a change in the role of social structures over time, this has to do with hierarchy. There is a likely notable consistency between medieval settlements and modern cities in underlying elements of the social and economic interactions. Yes, because يعني المفروض إنه الهيراركي تعمل some limitations أو constraining influence. إنما الحقيقة هم لقوا إنه لأ، إنه عادي خالص في medieval settlements كانوا the same expected density size and so on. And في social and economic interactions يعني ما فيش no limitations, no restrictions because of the hierarchies among individuals that shape the development of the core urban areas. طبعا here, not all of the students will be able to understand the right answer. This is the right answer. That's why, please guys, يعني focus on eliminating. When you are in doubt, don't cross it out. يعني you didn't understand this one. Keep it, don't eliminate it till you check the others. Here we are sure 100% this one is wrong because the limitation they mentioned here is not mentioned here. Okay, so this no limitations here. Okay, no constraints. Letter C, the social and economic dynamics that affect urban agglomeration were likely much different in medieval settlements than in modern cities, despite similar activity across time in population. I didn't talk about similar activity. يعني I didn't mention these. And I didn't say that they are different. بالعكس, this would not suggest إنه إحنا لقينا typical relationship. Letter D, the constraining influence of hierarchical medieval institutions, constraining يعني limiting, likely created a different social dynamics in some social groupings but little to no effect on members of other social groupings. طبعا this one is full of features of wrong answers. Okay, أولا ال constraining influence created different social dynamics. No, this is the opposite of what has been mentioned here. I'm talking about consistency, not difference. يعني in this part, I didn't talk about differences. For anything, if you got this question, so guys, make sure that at the end of the text, you don't say any differences. Okay, or you can say despite the role of whatever, there is notable consistency. في consistency in its typically expected. Okay, anything that is related to differences will be incorrect. Now, we're done with the inference questions and the time-consuming questions. Now, it is the time for writing questions. Here, usually the single dash is equal to the colon. يعني this is a rule. Except when we have another dash here. So you must read from the beginning, assigning the subject and the verb and non-essential information and so on. Make sure that you read the whole sentence from the beginning till the end, because you might have a dash that would affect your choice. Let's make sure that this is the right answer. Occurring in the constellation, comma, wherever, 38 million light years from Earth, كل ده non-essential. SN19 blah 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 was a. So this is a subject. Was a. This is a verb. Was a supernova. Okay, supernova. تمام. Okay, that's a complete thought. SN 1940b was a supernova. Nice. وبعدين explosion of a massive star which blasts large amounts of radiation, heavy elements, and debris into space that was first detected by American whatever. That, and I have here what? I have a dash. And usually that, okay, that, this is the structure of that. That plus verb لازم هنا noun. Okay, طيب. Noun, that, verb, we shouldn't be separating them with any punctuation unless we have a non-essential information. فهنا noun واضح إن في noun وبعدين non-essential information. Then we have dash that was where is it? Was first detected. So you have to put the same dash after this noun so that this part would be non-essential. Since I have a dash here, so there must be a dash there. So it's the right answer. The tricky part about this question is that if you didn't notice that there is a dash here, you would be eliminating C and D because they are similar, thinking that this is a single dash. No, it's not a single dash. It will be paired up with this dash. Here we said that don't forget about the choice. We usually whenever we see a dash and a semicolon, we eliminate them both. Unless eliminate, I will بس don't I don't want to confuse you. Eliminate the period and the dash and the semicolon, okay, because they are equal. Unless you have a complex list. Okay, make sure that you will read from here the beginning of the sentence that has the blank till the end. If you have a look, you will find the semicolon. طيب, don't also choose the semicolon كده blindly. In this case, I will not eliminate A and B. And I will not choose the semicolon blindly. I must make sure that this part belongs to the items of the complex list. طبعا complex list, you guys know إنه complex list, this is item number 1, item number 2, item number 3. Okay, let me write. And item number 3. So here, item number 1 will have يعني internal comma. Item number 2 will have also an internal comma. So item number 3, we might have also internal comma. So in order to avoid the overusage of commas, we put semicolons to separate the items of the complex list. Complex list. Okay. طب what what is the most significant part about the complex list? Semicolon and. We don't usually put semicolon and unless we have a complex list. Okay. طيب, here let's read the sentence. These included intricate patterns of interlocking spiral lines. أهي. They included intricate patterns of interlocking spiral lines. أدي ده item number 1. هي included, they will still, and this is what a part of, it's related to it, which often held symbolic significance. Then semicolon, depictions of birds, horses, and other animals. Okay, the second item, and has also commas, and inlaid in animal accents. Okay, inlaid animal accents. هنا third part didn't have internal comma. عادي خالص. if 2 items only have internal commas, عادي 1 item doesn't, no problem. المهم ان انا عندي a series of nouns. فهنا that's the right answer. Okay. including there are these included intricate patterns of interlocking spiral lines which often held symbolic significance. Okay. طبعا semicolon and بتقول لنا ان احنا عندنا more than 2 items, 3 items. Let's go for the next one. This one was I have seen it for the first time, I didn't see it before. We can write a note here, not only but also you shouldn't separate them at all unless after but also there is a complete thought, subject to verb or complete thought. هنا after but also I don't have a subject and a verb and a complete thought. don't separate not only الفريز بتاعتها and but also unless you find the complete clauses after each part. هنا clause and here clause, another clause. بس هنا if you can see, a recent study found evidence that these polynomials may be caused not only by, why would you separate this part? Why? Okay, no separation at all, because we need to know not only caused by what? Okay, not only by cyclones but also by vapor streams. You don't have to separate them. Okay, not only by, if you will consider this part as a non-essential, so but also will be related to what? This also will be related to what? And this is the same thing. So don't separate. A transition question. We're about خلاص to finish. We have a transition question. To that end, this refers to a cause and effect. You must know the relationship that each answer choice conveys, cause and effect. And we have here logic. However, contradiction Conversely, contrast. So we will eliminate these two because both of them are contradiction. Okay, and there refers to a place. Refers to a place. يعني there must be a place. Okay, there must be a place mentioned before there. So at Mary Hitchcock Puppet Theater in San Diego, California, audiences sit down to enjoy a live puppet show. Yes, that's a place where audiences are sitting to enjoy a live puppet show. So it's either cause and effect or referring to the place. They will experience puppetry in its highest form. Yes, يعني the puppet show, of course. To that end, يعني that's the effect. Okay, I said already they sit down to enjoy a live puppet show. Okay, so there it's referring to the place, not cause and effect. Not cause and effect. Okay, this one here I have in many cases, يعني often, similarly, comparison, indeed, emphasis, and therefore that's cause and effect. طيب, so often here يعني in many times, in many times, situations. Okay. طيب, every US state has an associated soil, state soil, which is typically selected by a group of experts. يعني كل ولاية has its own state soil. ودي بتبقى selected by a group of experts, then passed through the state legislature to receive its official designation. So I have here a sequence. Then passed through the state legislature to receive its official designation. For example, I'm giving an example of a state soil that was designated in 1987. Oklahoma's Port Silt loam soil was formally designated in 1987. And Maine's whatever soil in 1999. So there is a sequence. Years pass. So I have here also a reference to the time between a soil's selection and officially designation, as the legislative process can be notoriously slow. So I'm talking here about يعني التايم and الفrequency and so on. Okay, in many cases would be the best answer. Similarly, I'm not saying I'm not saying similar traits between two subjects. Indeed, like emphasizing the same thing. Here I'm specific. Here I already gave you specific names of states. And here this is more general. So indeed, we'll introduce more details, more specific details, which is not happening. I already mentioned the details here. Okay, so letter A is the best answer. Here we have conversely and however we eliminate because both are contradiction even before we read anything. In other words, that's a restatement. يعني you guys need to know the relationship of each transition word. It's a restatement or a brief restatement, a summary, of what has been mentioned earlier. And here we have a sequence. طبعا, as you can see, these words can show you that there is a sequence. Okay, so I will go for then. Not in other words, because this part is not a restatement of this part. No, it's not a summary of this part. This is something and this is something. Okay, this is not a restatement. And you must have noticed the words that can refer to the sequence. By the way, I offered this question to my basic course students. يعني as training, because after we study and we practice from the College Board Bank and so on, I offer them real questions to see what they are gonna do, and most of them, mashallah, they answered this question correctly. يعني you guys can answer real questions right after taking the topic in the basic course. طيب, here, however, contradiction, and we have here addition. طبعا contradiction, different ideas, different positive, negative, opposite ideas. Okay, in conclusion, summary or restatement. طبعا, guys, you cannot be able to answer such questions unless you study these transitions and their relationships by heart. Restatement. Okay, as such, if you don't know it, it's even it's cause and effect. But if you don't you didn't study this before, or you haven't seen it before, you can just make a question mark and start with what you know first. Try, however, in addition, in conclusion, and leave as such till the end. If none of them worked, you can go for this one immediately. Okay, so here, voxel modeling and kit bashing approaches of three-dimensional digital modeling for video games yield the graphics that accurately represent the relative sizes and proportions of real-world objects. Okay, so we're talking about video games, digital modeling for video games. But since these graphics are considered from perfect geometric shapes, they tend to lack organic realism. There is a contradiction here. Okay, there is a contradiction. But since these graphics are considered from perfect geometric shapes, okay, اللي هم ايه? These three-dimensional digital modeling for video games, okay, yield graphics. Okay. Okay يا شباب. So they tend to lack organic realism. So they tend to lack something. Okay. They tend to lack organic realism. You don't have to, they have something despite of their perfect geometric shapes. They tend to lack something. Okay. The organic realism. These 3D elements may display unnaturally precise angles and curves. Yeah, I ended here with what? Tend to lack organic realism. That's a negative. Okay, so these 3D elements may display unnaturally precise, negative. Curves as compared to their real world counterparts. So I'm still talking about what they lack. So it's no contradiction because this is negative and this is negative. And no addition because actually I'm saying the same thing. The unusual, precise angles and so on, or because they lack organic realism. In conclusion, definitely this is not a brief restatement of this. Okay, this is not a brief restatement of that. Okay, a brief, you can find it shorter even. Okay, as such, that's a cause and effect. This will lead to that. This lack of organic realism will lead, okay, as such, these 3D elements may display unnatural precise angles as a result of what? Of lacking organic realism. Okay. The last question here, it's a rhetorical synthesis question. And this rhetorical synthesis question, yes, was shown in various trials. You have to focus on the words after to. Okay, to emphasize, that's the verb. Emphasize means you have to say it stressfully, clearly. A difference. A is one difference. Three. Between the two flags. So I have two flags. I must find two flags. Okay, two flags. So vexillologists study flags like those of El Salvador and Zambia. طبعا no difference between two flags. Many countries feature symbols on their flags such as animals, plants, or landfalls, and no difference between two flags. Countries like El Salvador and Zambia use symbols on their flags. Examples include plants. This is a similarity. El Salvador includes a plant on its flag, whereas that's a contrast. Zambia's flag includes an animal. Like that, we're done, guys, and I really didn't wish to waste your time. Hopefully, you were able to make use of the information in this text, in this session, I'm sorry, and these texts we discussed. The questions written here were problematic for some students. That's why we gathered them in the revision. They were sent to the admin by the students, and we collected them in one sheet. Yes, let me start receiving your questions, but I'm gonna stop the recording.